just to say that's the upper limit. And then after that, at DM, the committee will then interact with the presentation that would have made, and then we'll take it from there. And then there's we continue our program announcement, and then we close after that. But thank you very much, the Deputy Minister. Let me allow you to start, and as I give to you, the only time I'll come back to you is after you've finished with your team 45 minutes from now. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Good morning, Chair, and morning to members of the committee, and good morning to the generals and the staff in your office, Chair. It's an honor and privilege for me this morning to appear before you, which is for the first time that I'm attending your committee. I must say that I fully agree with the sentiment you expressed that you'll want to meet with us on a different day for us to interact with yourselves on how we have dispensed of the resources that through you, the legislature, has given us to utilize in the course of doing our work. We look forward to that interaction. Today we are here to talk on the budget that has been presented and its impact on us as the South African Police. If it was our wish, we would have wished that we were given an increase instead of the cut. But we know the environment in which we find ourselves in. The team is led administratively by the National Commissioner, together with the Deputy National Commissioners and Divisional Commissioners and the CFOs, who will lead in the presentation. And through you, Chair, if you may allow, I will request General Stolle to lead our presentation. Through you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Deputy Minister. Definitely, we'll be interacting. Where I grew up in some village, the highest ranking officer was a sergeant. So this thing we came to learn of them later, that there's somebody called a captain, there's somebody called a general. So we are quite honored to interact with the generals, the captains, you name them. General Stolle.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, my Deputy Minister. Chair, in attendance, we have got 8 Lieutenant Generals. The first 4, the first 3 is the Deputy National Commissioners, then is the CFO, and then is 3 Divisional Commissioners. We then have got 4 Major Generals and the 4 Brigadiers in attendance and 2 Colonels. I am not going to give the details on account of time. And our presentation, Chair, is twofold. The first part is going to be given by the CFO. The second part on performance is going to be given by strategic management. Both of them we've given the CFO, because the Chair has prescribed the time, we've given the CFO 15 minutes, and we've also given strategic management 20 minutes for the second presentation. With your permission, Chair, I can give them the floor as I've outlined. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, General. Good morning, Chairperson and the honorable members, our Deputy Minister, all the Deputy National Commissioners and Senior Managers in the police. I will take the committee through in terms of the first first set of this presentation. The contents of this presentation will then touch on the indication by the committee, the adjusted budget implications, second quarter of the 2021 financial year, that will cover the financial performance as well as the non-financial performance. Next slide, Chairperson. The committee indicated that SAPS must present overall impact of the adjustment budget on the department's ability to deliver on its mandate, the service delivery implications of these budget cuts, measures put in place to ensure that effective and efficient economic use of proposed allocation in the bill, financial performance at the end of the second quarter of 2021 financial year, and actions taken to prevent possible overspending, non-financial performance at the end of second quarter of the 2021 financial year, and actions taken to prevent underperformance, if any. Next slide, Chair. I will first touch on the adjusted budget implications. Chair, during the supplementary budget process, it was required of the SAPS to reprioritize the operational baseline with 1.136 billion, and an additional allocation of 3.7 billion was also allocated to the SAPS in support of the department's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This reprioritization was taken into account before the internal apportioning or allocation of operational funding that was performed to each provincial budget and subsequent distribution to the police stations. The reduction in the SAPS budget announced by the Minister of Finance will mainly be on compensation of employees. As far as it relates to salary increases and reconsiderations on human resource priorities, as well as reduction on prioritized operational funding. On the next bullet, though we are indicating that no provincial budget will be reduced and therefore no police station budget will be reduced, we are not saying that this allocation is not is enough, Chair. What we mean is that as and when we consider this reprioritization, we prioritize allocation at local level, which is allocation at police stations, so as not to impact service delivery on a negative level. As and when we reprioritize these resources, we prioritize and ensure that those services at local level are continuing, and we are able to then provide service delivery to the people on the ground. The affordability framework over the MTF will be evaluated once Cabinet has finalized budget allocation to the department. This will be done in order to determine the level at which human resource priorities can be considered and the inter alia impact on replacement of personnel losses over the MTF. In the next slide, I am going to touch on the summary of performance of expenditure analysis with a focus on the second quarter of 2021. We are indicating that past expenditure for multiple years are utilized to perform an expenditure analysis and to project anticipated baseline expenditure in a financial year. Although indicative of nature, the expenditure of each quarter in a financial year will not be precisely equal. And this is caused by reasons such as delivery of vehicles and other equipment, invoices from DPW, payment of salary increases and pay progression, etc. That each has its own unequal spending pattern. Adjustment estimate process was recently finalized. There were substantial in-year reductions that were introduced by National Treasury. In the next slide, there is a total spending indication there for the vote. As at end of September, that is the end of the second quarter, the department had utilized 46.6% of its total allocation, with a remainder of 53.4%. And this is in comparison to a linear indication of 50%. In the next slide, total spending for the vote. This is just a comparison with previous financial year to indicate that the spending patterns are more or less the same. If you compare for 2019-20, the department was at 47%. So we are not far away in terms of comparisons to last year. In the next slide, slide 11, comparisons of monthly spending with previous financial year. As I indicated, if you look at September, when you look at financial year 17-18, from 17-18 up to 2021, the pattern is plus or minus the same. However, 2021 is a little bit lower as a result of the impact of COVID-19 regulations as well as subsequent lockdowns. There was a little bit of an impact in relation to our work as the police. Slide number 12. Program spending amounts as at 30 September 2020. Program 1, which is your administration, adjusted estimate was 19 billion. As at end of September, 8.4 billion was spent, which is a percentage spending of 44.7%. Program 2, visible policing, with a spending of 47.5%. Program 3, which is detective services, with a spending percentage of 45.4%. Program 4, crime intelligence, with a spending percentage of 47.7%. Program 5, protection and security services, with a spending percentage of 47.7%. Overall, adjusted estimates were 99.5 billion. As at end of September, 46.3 billion was spent, which is a 46.6% in relation to percentage spending. The next slide, on slide 13, it's program spending. It is just a graphical illustration in terms of program 1, administration. What is remaining is 55.3%. Program 2 with a remainder of 52.5%, detective services 54.6%, crime intelligence 52.3%, and protection and security services with a remaining allocation of 52.3% to be utilized. Overview of the spending performance at program level. We are indicating the reasons, Chair, for the lower spending. For program 1, there was a lower than linear spending, mainly as a result of COVID-19 lockdown regulations. This prevented movement of subs employees and procurement that could not be processed. There was a bigger impact on the building industry as it was closed and capital projects could not be executed for the second quarter. This was mainly as a result of those lockdown at level 4 and level 5. Program 2, visible policing, program 3, detective services, program 4, crime intelligence, and program 5. The same reasons, lower than linear spending, mainly as a result of COVID-19 lockdown regulations. This prevented movement of subs employees between provinces and procurement that could not be processed. Basically, no capital procurements such as vehicles could be done in this first couple of months. Program 2, however, in terms of visible policing, there was a baseline reprioritization towards COVID-19. So our baseline reprioritization mainly affected Program 2. Expenditure was required from subs, and additional funding of 3.7 billion was earmarked by National Treasury. This was allocated in the special adjustment budget in support of subs' response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Allocation of such to Program 2 was done in June 2020, and spending thereon also had an impact on the program. In the next slide, slide number 15, the overview of spending performance at economic level. Compensation of employees, actual spending for the period comprises of 49.6% of the allocated budget and is slightly lower than the 50% linear benchmark. To be noted, as at end of September, cost of living salary increase was not paid. This is known that there is currently a matter in relation to the Labour Court. Substantial amount of compensation budget was suspended during the adjustment estimate budget process by National Treasury to an amount of 4.9 billion. Pay progression with effective date of 1 July 2020 still to be paid. Final verification, which is currently underway in the department. As we continue on the next slide, in terms of overview of performance spending, still at economic level, spending on goods and services comprised of 37.5% of the allocated budget as at end of September. This was largely affected by COVID-19 lockdown regulations and movement restrictions. Expenditure on COVID-19 project was 1.6 billion as at 30 September. The integrated criminal justice strategy spending was also below linear benchmark. We had some public works invoices that were much lower than anticipated or not received. This was as a result of municipalities and DPW being on lockdowns. Transfers and subsidies were slightly below the linear benchmark at 48.2%. Payments for capital assets comprised of 23.4% of the allocated budget. Buildings and infrastructure were lower than expected. The effect or impact of COVID-19 lockdown on building industry had a negative impact. Machinery and equipment, historical spending tendencies reflect increased spending during the latter part of the financial year as delivery of vehicles, which is the major portion, takes place. This is a normal trend, Chair, as under expenditure of this item is not a real risk. In the next slide, which is slide number 17, we wanted to indicate the COVID-19 expenditure as on 30 September 2020. In particular, the source of funding. The SAPS had to reprioritize 1.136 billion from operational funding, plus an additional 3.7 billion that was allocated during the special adjustment budget process in support of SAPS response to the COVID-19. There was also a rollover of 248.440 million, less baseline reduction of 1.195 billion in adjustment estimate process. Then there is 3.88 billion. The expenditure is in the main, as we indicated, that it was to respond to the COVID-19. There was overtime that was paid to members when they were dealing with the responses in terms of enforcing lockdown regulations to the amount of 5 million. Reservists were also deployed to an amount of 4.3 million. There was procurement of PPEs, 1.5 billion. There were some equipments that were procured, especially at police station level, because we needed them to deal with the enforcement, the roadblocks, the static and the roadblocks that we were engaging on, to an amount of 25 million. Travel and subsistence, that was incurred 75 million, and other items such as leasing of items. We had to hire toilets. We had to hire a few items to be able to man those roadblocks successfully. An amount of 19 million was spent. In total, 1.6 billion was spent on COVID-19 response as at the end of September 2020. Thank you, Chair. The next slide will then be a summary of performance as at the end of the second quarter of 2021 on non-financial performance information, of which Brigadier Mitchell will take the committee through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, General, and good morning, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members, and our Deputy Minister. As General Dampani indicated, the summary of performance, this is non-financial performance information as at the end of the second quarter. Just a summary of actions taken to address underperformance. The correction of deviations from targeted performance, including performance above, but particularly performance below target, is a critical element of the SAPS's planning, monitoring and reporting process. Within the context of SAPS, performance reporting relates directly to the meeting of performance measures that are associated with outcomes and outputs that are reflected in our strategic plan and annual performance plans. The SAPS has an action plan to address areas of underperformance, which is maintained and focuses on the identification of root causes as well as dependencies, time-bound implementation of actions to correct performance, focusing on the root cause analysis, and to just point out to the honourable members that certain targets related to performance indicators that are affected directly by COVID-19 were adjusted in the addendum to the 2020-2021 annual performance plan, which was tabled in Parliament on the 8th of July 2020. Looking at a summary of our quarterly performance for Program 1 to Program 5 as indicated, and addressing both of the quarters, Quarter 1 and Quarter 2, we have a total number of 21 indicators in Program 2, of which 11 of those performance indicators were under target in Quarter 1. A total of 7 of those performance indicators were under target in Quarter 2. 5 performance indicators in Program 1 were under target in Quarter 1 and Quarter 2. 6 performance indicators were under target in Quarter 1, but this performance was rectified in Quarter 2. And then 2 performance indicators were on target in Quarter 1, but under target at the end of Quarter 2. Within Program 2, we have a total of 26 performance indicators as indicated, of which 7 were under target in Quarter 1 and 7 under target in Quarter 2. A total of 6 performance indicators were under target in Program 2 for Quarters 1 and 2. 1 performance indicator was under target in Quarter 1, but this performance was rectified at the end of Quarter 2. And 1 performance indicator in Program 2 was on target in Quarter 1, but under target in Quarter 2. In Program 3, we have 29 performance indicators. 12 performance indicators were under target in Quarter 1. A total of 11 performance indicators under target in Quarter 2. 10 performance indicators under target in both quarters. 2 performance indicators, the performance was rectified at the end of the second quarter, and 1 performance indicator under target at the end of Quarter 2, having been on target during Quarter 1. Program 4 comprises 13 performance indicators, 7 of which were under target in Quarter 1, 3 under target in Quarter 2. The total number of performance indicators under target for 1 and 2 was 2. 4 performance indicators, the performance was rectified at the end of Quarter 2, and 1 performance indicator being under target at Quarter 2 but on target in Quarter 1. Program 5 comprises 7 performance indicators. 7 were under target in Quarter 1, 1 under target in Quarter 2, 1 performance indicator under target across both quarters, and 1 performance indicator, the performance rectified at the end of Quarter 2, and no performance indicators were under target at the end of Quarter 2. Just to indicate that the total number of performance indicators under target at the end of Quarter 1 was 39, and there was a significant improvement at the end of Quarter 2, only 29 performance indicators under target. Looking at Program 1 and the individual performance indicators, the annual target is reflected. The number of identified digital radio communication infrastructure sites modernized and implemented. As indicated, the target for Quarter 1, 3 high sites, the actual 0. The target for Quarter 2, as indicated, the actual performance indicating that the targeted performance not achieved. The next performance indicator, number of national network communication infrastructure sites modernized and implemented, the annual targets reflected. The performance by SAPS, unfortunately, at the end of Quarter 1 and Quarter 2, the targeted performance not having been achieved. The percentage of learners assessed and declared competent upon completion of specified training in prioritized training areas, looking at crime prevention, crimes committed against women and children, and crime investigations. The annual target, 97% of learners assessed and declared competent. The actual performance at the end of the first quarter as indicated, and this performance was corrected at the end of the second quarter, this indicator having been significantly affected by COVID-19. Percentage of learners assessed and declared competent upon completion of specified training in specialized capabilities, looking at our public order policing, forensic science, crime intelligence, and cybercrime. A similar target to the previous indicator, 97% of learners assessed and declared competent. The performance at the end of the first quarter as indicated, and only one of these environments, crime intelligence, was not corrected as at the end of the second quarter. Percentage compliance with SAPS's ethics and integrity plan. This performance indicator was on target at the end of the first quarter. At the end of the second quarter, the submission of financial disclosures by our middle management service, financial management and supply chain management capabilities, the target of 100% had not been achieved, with 98.56% having been achieved in both MMS as well as financial management and SCM. Percentage of IPID related cases finalized within the prescribed time frame on target for quarter one. Quarter two, 90% within 60 calendar days, the target. The actual performance, 88.89%, or 8 from a total of 9. Percentage of audits completed in terms of the internal audit plan, as well as the percentage of inspections executed in terms of the approved inspection plan. Both of these performance indicators were significantly impacted on by COVID-19, as both our internal audit capability as well as our inspectorate capability were redirected by management during quarter one and quarter two of this financial year to focus on the auditing and inspection of compliance with adherence to COVID-19 regulations. So as indicated, both of these performance indicators under target in both quarter one and quarter two. Moving to program 2, visible policing, looking at the crime prevention sub-program, number of stolen, lost and illegal firearms recovered. The target 893 in the first quarter, the actual performance 280. This is an example of a performance indicator that was adjusted in the addendum to the annual performance plan, which was tabled on the 8th of July. The target was revised to 4,225 for quarters 2 to quarter 4, and 513 being the actual performance at the end of quarter 2. Percentage applications for new firearm licenses finalized within 90 working days, which was the target for quarter 1. This was revised to 120 working days as a result of the impact of COVID-19 from quarters 2 to quarter 4. Under target for quarter 1, 31.55% being the actual performance. Under target for quarter 2, 30.17%. And this particular environment was also impacted on significantly by COVID-19, our central firearms register. Number of stolen, robbed vehicles recovered. The annual target being 33,397 for quarter 1, adjusted to 36,674 for quarters 2 to quarter 4, and under target at the end of the first quarter as well as at the end of the second quarter, but a significant improvement in terms of the number of stolen, robbed vehicles recovered at the end of the second quarter, 11,625. Percentage reduction in the number of contact crimes against women. The target was a 7.6% reduction for quarter 1, and it increased by 7.8% at the end of quarter 1. However, the target of a 6.9% reduction, which was the adjustment reflected in the addendum to the annual performance plan applicable to quarters 2 to quarter 4, the performance being on target at the end of quarter 2. Percentage reduction in the number of contact crimes against children. The 7.5% target was not achieved at the end of quarter 1. There was an increase of 9.7%. The 6.73% reduction also adjusted in the addendum to the annual performance plan. We achieved a reduction of 5.7% at the end of quarter 2. The number of identified functional strategic partnerships, as well as the number of provinces in which the community in blue concept has been initiated, both of these performance indicators not achieved at the end of quarters 1 and quarter 2, but both of these performance indicators impacted on significantly by the restrictions that were imposed by the lockdown regulations. Number of cities in which the implementation of the Safer Cities framework has been initiated, on target at the end of quarter 1, under target at the end of quarter 2. However, there has been significant improvement already within quarter 3. Percentage increase in the detection rate for contact crimes, the target being 55.47% across both quarters, 48.6% the actual at the end of quarter 1, under target 47.94% the actual at the end of quarter 2, also under target. Increase in the detection rate for contact crimes at the 30 high contact crime weight stations, the target 56.23%, as indicated. The actual performance at the end of the first quarter, 35.78%, the second quarter 35.32%. Percentage increase in the detection rate for crimes against women, the target 75.15%. At the end of the first quarter, 72.67%. At the end of the second quarter, also under target 72.27%. Percentage increase in the detection rate for crimes against children, the target 70.10%. 48.6%, the actual performance at the end of the first quarter, 66.05%, a significant improvement, but underperformance at the end of the second quarter. Percentage increase in the compliance with the taking of buccal samples from Schedule 8 arrested offenders, our target being 60%, 27.8% at the end of the first quarter, an improvement to 35.27% at the end of the second quarter. Percentage reduction in outstanding fingerprint investigative leads was on target at the end of the first quarter, but increased by 54.42%. The actual performance at the end of the second quarter, resulting in the indicator not being on target. Percentage reduction in outstanding IBIS investigative leads, 1.25%. The target for the first quarter, it was reduced by 0.99% at the end of the second quarter, but increased to 77.09% at the end of the second quarter. Percentage of identified clandestine laboratories dismantled with arrests, the target being 90% at the end of the first quarter, the actual performance 88.89%, or 8 from a total of 9, but on target at the end of the second quarter. Percentage of results of trial updated in respect of 2 verdicts, guilty verdict being the first, not guilty verdict being the second. The target 95% of results of trial updated within 20 calendar days for both performance indicators. At the end of the first quarter, guilty verdicts, the actual performance was 92.58%, and under target at the end of the second quarter, 89.12% being the actual performance. For not guilty, the actual performance at the end of the first quarter, 92.24%, which was corrected as at the end of the second quarter. Looking at the percentage of routine case exhibits finalized, 75% of routine case exhibits processed within 35 calendar days being the target. Under target for the first quarter, 51.05%. The actual performance, 30.01%. The actual performance at the end of the second quarter. Percentage of case exhibits not finalized exceeding the prescribed time frame. This is the backlog, which should not exceed 10%. 266.67% at the end of the first quarter, a significant improvement to 145.22% at the end of the second quarter. Percentage of DNA intelligence case exhibits finalized, 80% of these case exhibits should be processed within 90 calendar days. 20.77%, the actual performance at the end of the first quarter, 13.26%, the performance at the end of the second quarter. Moving into Program 4, Crime Intelligence, and looking at proactive intelligence reports that were operationalized for the first performance indicator at provincial level, the target being 80%, under target at the end of the first quarter, but on target at the end of the second quarter. Reactive intelligence reports operationalized at provincial level as indicated, also on target at the end of the second quarter, and then reactive intelligence reports that were operationalized at a national level on target at the end of the second quarter. Percentage of security clearances finalized in the SAPs in relation to the total planned annually. The percentage that was targeted was 24.96% for the first quarter. We achieved 12.39%. The target was revised in the addendum to the APP to 22.19% for the second quarter. The actual performance 15.72%. This performance indicator was also significantly impacted on by restrictions implemented as a result of COVID-19, as was the following performance indicator in the Crime Intelligence Program. Percentage of ICT security assessments finalized, 25% being the target. The actual performance at the end of the first quarter, 11.36%. A revised target of 22.24%, the actual performance being 12.95%. Percentage of mandatory physical security assessments finalized, under target as indicated at the end of the second quarter, on target at end of the first quarter, I apologize, on target at the end of the second quarter. Percentage of security awareness programs conducted under target at the end of the first quarter, but that performance revised at the end of the second quarter. Percentage of arrests of identified transnational crime suspects facilitated in relation to requests received from Interpol member countries, on target at the end of the first quarter, but under target at the end of the second quarter, with only one from a total of 8 requests received having been addressed. Percentage of strategic installations being the first performance indicator in the final program, Program 5, Protection and Security Services, under target for quarters 1 and quarter 2, but having been significantly affected by COVID-19. The percentage of national key points evaluated under target at the end of the first quarter, but that performance having been corrected at the end of the second quarter, which concludes this part of the presentation as well as the overall presentation. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, Generals. What we'll do, I'll request the honorable members to indicate those who want to interact with the presentation. You know how we do it. Yes, honorable members, can I get your names?
Sheikh Imam.
Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Matafa.
Honorable Matafa.
Peters.
Honorable Peters. Sarupen, where are you? Are you there?
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Are you having a badge?
Yes, I'll have a badge. Thank you.
Honorable Sarupen.
I think the connection. Welcome to our honorable.
Please, can you please mute Lomo in my meeting? Okay. Honorable Sarupen. Honorable members. Honorable members. Honorable Lenzan, are you there?
Kaiso.
Honorable Kaiso.
Honorable Tlangweni, Chair.
Honorable Tlangweni. Okay. Members, let's see. Maximum 5 minutes for your questions. Can I start with Honorable Sheikh Imam?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner and your team, Deputy Minister, for the presentation. Yeah, my first question is, and I don't want you to underplay the seriousness of what is going on. You had a 5.8 billion budget cut. The challenges in the country continue, and you know that the crime rate is increasing, contrary to what you are saying. And you're comparing last year to this year. This year was during COVID-19. There's been a lot of restrictions, and as a result, that should answer for why the crime rate is down in certain sectors, of course. But you know the situation, you know it's getting out of hand, you know the protests are increasing. Right now, we're going to a local government election. How do you intend providing an effective South African police services with such a large budget cut? That's the first thing. The other thing is this, in the Portfolio Committee on Police, we've asked for a report on the PPEs. You did give a report, but not a substantive or a comprehensive report. And one good example was the issues of, I think it was IPED and Civilian Secretariat, where the cost of some of the PPEs, and I'll give you an example of the 5-liter sanitizer, where it cost about 400 Rand in one company and 1,950 Rand in another company, which is, I think, Biologica. And so we wanted a breakdown, which I hope you can give this committee, since we follow the money, as to how is it there's such a large discrepancy between two companies from 400 and somewhat to 1,950, and who are the directors and things of these companies, so we can see exactly what has actually gone there. Now, you say that the compensation budget has been suspended. Could you please explain to us? You are well below target when it comes to the firearms, both in issuing of firearm licenses and the other firearms that have been received. Can you tell us how you're dealing with that? And then lastly, I won't take much more of your time, is the issue particularly of gender-based violence. You know that the measures that we are putting in place, in my view, is totally inadequate. Your minister and your team have admitted this is not really a police matter, because police are not able to police. Most of this crime is committed by intimate partners. What measures are you putting in place to work with the other relevant departments so we can create a better society to try and prevent this gender-based violence, rather than coming after these crimes are committed and then expecting the South African Police Services and the Department of Justice to deal with the problem? And then together with that is, how have you strengthened the relationship between you, South African Police Services, and the Justice Department? Because you are arresting people, within an hour they are being released by the Justice Department, which is causing more havoc for you in terms of that. So could you perhaps just tell us that, how do you measure with your expenditure to your performance? What mechanisms do you have to see that we are getting value for money? Thank you.
Thank you. Mathafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Greetings to the DM, National Commissioner, and the SAPS team. Chair, let me start first by welcoming the presentation. I think it's very informative and it assists in us to do our work. Chair, just to take a bite on the presentation, let me start by underscoring two of Honorable Sheikh's points. The first one is on gender-based violence. In the presentation, there was an indication that there is a reduction on specialized program. I see GBV as a specialized program, and the country, particularly the president, committed a special focus towards fighting this particular scourge. Can we be informed if whether the cut on the reduction of specialized programs will affect this one particular priority area? The second point, Chair, is on the issue of compensation of employees. I'm interested to know, out of the vacancy rates that exist at this point in time, together with the anticipated reduction, how many specialized positions will be affected, or how many are those can be deemed to be critical in terms of the new focus area? There were new initiatives that were being indicated by the minister and the DM to say that there will be special units that are formulated. How many of these units will be affected by this particular cut? Chair, there was a slide. I tried to see on the presentation if whether was that slide 21 or slide 22, but it's the slide before the program 1, admin 1, performance indicator. The presenter indicated that there were 39 under target for Q2. I just want to know if whether this 39, was it for a particular program, or was it an overall under target, meaning that it's for all the targets combined? And if it's for all targets combined, out of how many did they not achieve the 39? This one, Chair, I'm not sure if whether I followed the presentation on the target on lost and stolen firearms. Is this target based on firearms that are reported lost or stolen by the public, or lost or stolen from the police services? I'll be interested to know from which angle are we reporting. Chair, the last part is on the operations. Can maybe the team indicate to us how is their payment to creditors performance? Are they adhering to 30 days? Are they ensuring that those service providers are being paid so that whatever service or products they're delivering to the subs are rendered effectively? And Chair, the reason I'm raising on this one is that where I live, next to where I live, about 2 kilometers, there's a mechanic, and he repairs SAPS vehicles as well. There are 4 Nyalas that have been parked in that yard for the past 5 years. And we are sitting with a challenge whereby most police stations are struggling because there are no vehicles on the road or in the stations. So I'm interested to know if whether are these vehicles parked in this yard because they have been disposed of, or is it because we are not paying off suppliers? And just like Honorable Sheikh on the breakdown of PPE, can we request that maybe a report be furnished to the committee on how many vehicles are not in commission due to them being either at service or at repairs? And how will this budget reduction impact on ensuring that those vehicles are back on service? And the very last one is what Honorable Sheikh indicated with regards to local government elections. Honorable Chair, before the local government elections come, there will be the festive season, which is upon us. It's coming thick and fast. I'm interested to know if whether with the budget cut, is SAPS considering reprioritizing its operations to ensure that visible policing and policing in general.
It's going to be very short, Chairperson. Let me kick off from where Honorable Matafa has left off with regard to the 2.7 billion reduction for visible policing. I just want to find out truly how possible is it that in this day and era where we've got challenges of crime and challenges of a lot of other situations in our communities, we can still have a situation where the police can have or allow for a reduction of this amount of money, especially in visible policing. Today, Chairperson, incidentally, is the launch of the 16 days of heightened awareness of violence against women. And it is probably painful for me to sit here and be listening and also be contributing and participating in a discussion where we can agree to a 2.7 billion rand reduction. How is this going to impact on the ability of the police to respond to call out, especially in view of the challenges that every time the SAPS is called out, they would come with challenges or complaints about no personnel, no vehicles, their inability to crack cases, no safe houses, as well as the fact that in many of our communities, there's no police station. I once read about a situation in the Eastern Cape where a woman had to travel about 200 kilos to the nearest police station, and en route to that police station, she was raped. She was a victim of domestic violence, and then along the route, she became a victim of GBV even further. The other thing that I want to find out from the police is there is an allegation, and this one I got from the Mahareng Municipal Magistrate area, where the police apparently claim that there is a directive from National to keep the statistics low, especially of domestic violence, by encouraging the victim and the perpetrator to negotiate or to go home and resolve the matters at home. In that way, they keep the statistics because they have not recorded this particular incident in the record or occurrence book. So it is important that we look into these particular matters. The other thing, Chairperson, I want to find out from Commissioner Stone, as well as the Deputy Minister. Is it, we always believed, Deputy Minister, from your activist days, we knew that we believed that the people are their own liberators. Why is the police in our communities resisting to work together with community initiatives that are truly visibly impacting on the reduction of crime in those communities? Yes, it is important that some of these initiatives be supported by the police in terms of the necessary techniques of dealing with challenges of how to deal with perpetrators and all those particular issues. But to drive them away, I would believe, is a problem. Chairperson, I'm raising this with regard to a crime fighting initiative that has been reported even globally or internationally through Al Jazeera and others, that is happening in Kimberley, where the community is truly in support of this initiative. But the police are working with, we have always been informed, with criminals to try and undermine this initiative. Is it not important, Deputy Minister, that the police and your office, like your predecessor has engaged them in the previous period, be able to engage with these community initiatives, give them the necessary support and structure to work together with the police, because they are key stakeholders in fighting crime in our communities. The other thing, Chairperson and Deputy Minister and Commissioner, is it not about time that we get a report on the impact of the work of community policing forums that are supported by SAPS? Are they productive? Is it something that we need to strengthen, or is it something that needs a total overhaul to look at how we could be able to address these particular issues? Because in our communities, there are CPF members, but unfortunately, these people are not available when the community needs them most. And I think it is important that we understand the role of the CPFs, how they can then be able to be that first line of defense, especially in situations like we have right now with GBV, because one of the colleagues have indicated GBV, unfortunately, or domestic violence is something that you cannot police because it happens in an environment where people are supposed to be friendly, acquainted to each other, or in a relationship. So I think it is important that we get to understand the work and the impact and the resources that the police are giving to CPFs and whether there is value for money in this CPFs. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Peters. Honorable Joseph.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. I want us to start off by agreeing with Member Peters' points, that most of the points he raised, I wanted to raise. But first of all, Chairperson, the Constitution is very clear that in Section 205, the mandate of the police is to combat, investigate crime, and maintain public order and uphold the law, protect the citizens and their properties. Now, Chairperson, Section 205 or 206 also refers to a political responsibility that sits with Cabinet, it sits with us as this committee, and it sits with the provincial committees. And I think there is the responsibility in our engagement that we have with the police. And what is important, I want to now just a little bit go off the agenda, Chairperson. The Brackenfell School, that is a national topic, is in my constituency. And at this point, I would like to thank the police for maintaining public order and in the way they've handled the situation thus far, in according to the mandate. I want to thank the police. They've done a good job last week. And over the last few weeks, they're in the Brackenfell constituency where I serve. But Chairperson, this adjustment downwards of the budget is compromising the support that the police need at the states to maintain public order throughout the country. The vacancy rate is affected, and this is compromised the mandate of the police to be visible, as Member Matafa also raised. And I would like, my question is just, what other intelligence support is there for the police from other departments, whether it be defense or intelligence departments, for the police to assist them? Because if we want proactive policing, we need intelligence, we need information, and I just want to know if they do get the support and what support is now needed or even compromised. And then, Chairperson, my last point, the gender-based violence that's reported to the police, and the cases referred to NGOs for mediation, and that I picked up already in 2012 2011 to 2013 when I was in the NCOP, when we visited police stations. There was always this referral to NGOs, which is not wrong, to mediate between people, particularly in families where there's violence, and then it comes back. But there was a record of repeated cases coming back to the police. So my question is to the police: is there a record of that type of complaints that has been processed further to go to court, while there is evidence that the mediation does not help? Because that, what Member Peters said, refers to is keeping the stats low and out of the police official records because of mediation. And I think we need to know something more of that, the strategy that the police used to do almost social workers work, call for mediation, but that the repeated offenders is not properly processed to the courts. I would like their response on that. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the police for that sterling work they're doing in my constituency. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Joseph. Honorable Sarupen.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I have a couple of questions. The first is in relation to generally baseline reductions to SAPs over the medium term. We know that because of the economic environment, because of the economic crunch and reduced revenues to the state, that we are going to see continued reductions or stagnations in budgets over the medium term. And I'd like to know from SAPs how they're ensuring that they're able to cope with that, what steps they're going to take to ensure that their programs, and more importantly, crime prevention, is going to be not affected or minimally affected by these cuts, what efficiency measures they're taking, particularly in the areas of supply chain, to ensure that past instances and controversies with regard to supply chain and SAPs are not repeated. And if they've identified any efficiencies, could they tell us what they are right now that could help them to ensure that they direct money to policing itself? Now, one of the things that have been focused on specifically here is that while they won't be reducing police station budgets, there'll be reconsideration of human resource priorities, as well as a reduction and reprioritize operational funding. And so I'd like to find out if they are going to be able to maintain the numbers of police officers they have in the medium term and not be dependent on retirements and reducing the number of police officers that we have out there to meet the budget cut requirements over the medium term as well. So I would really like to know what we're going to do to be keeping our police numbers at where they are right now. We should in this country be increasing our police numbers, but of course we need to consider the macroeconomic environment as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sarupen. Honorable Kaiso.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to be brief and thank you for the presentation, detailed presentation by the department led by the Deputy Minister. First question or clarity seeking question, Honorable Chair, is on the, or let me say it upfrontly, looking at the presentation there, especially with this cut of 2.7 billion for visible policing program. Actually, it was not supposed to be a start, given what already my colleagues have explained with regard to crime against women and children. So it's actually not was supposed to be a start at all, if it was according to me, because then it will send a very different message to what actually we are resolving in terms of fighting crime against women and children and gender-based violence in particular. Now, the second one was that I need to understand, the Treasury really discussed with the department as to the implications of these budget cuts, or was it just an issue of information that this is what is going to happen? So we just also want to understand that because it's very, very much important. And I also want to know from the department, what did they understood as the implication, a very clear implication of the 2.7 cut on visible policing for a mean? Because it's very important, I'll tell you, because the issue of crime, you know, it is something that is very problematic in the country, that you would not even relax your guard. So I just want to understand clearly, how did the department understand this cut when they explained to the Treasury this cut on visible policing for a program? Now on COVID-19, I agree with my colleague that perhaps we need to get that breakdown, which clearly indicate how is the issue of the whole economic inclusivity does display itself in the whole unfolding of the procurement. You know, I want to see that area, because it's also very much important when we talk about economic recovery. We want to also understand the beneficiaries in terms of the transformation. Now, on the issue of, on the slide 14, there's a mention of movement of personnel from one province to another province. I don't, my understanding was that we're referring to the public service, and those are the public servants, in my understanding, that they were supposed to be accommodated in terms of regulations of movement of public servants. So it was not supposed to be an excuse, that one, because I want to believe that they fall within the category of the essential service workers. So they were supposed to have been included as such, unless maybe there's something that one did not understand well during the presentation. But my understanding is that those are the public servants doing essential service. So it was not supposed to be an excuse. And lastly, it's on the Chair, let me pause. If there's anything, perhaps we'll come back at a later stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Praiso. Honorable Ntlangwini.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And thank you very much to the department for the report. Chair, I think, let me start with just putting my disappointment on the police on the Brackenfell issue, first of all. And then also just want to comment on them, on how they've handled Senegal rather. Because if you look at the two protests, it was the same situation and it was handled totally differently. In Brackenfell, I was there, Chair. The police just wanted to disrupt the whole process. And they were not even listening to reason, shooting women at close range, beating women while lying down on the floor. Such an apartheid tactic style, General. That must never be allowed in our democracy of today. And I want to place it here on record that we will follow up with those police officers that have shooten women at close range. The law must take its course on them. We'll never celebrate such behavior of police abusing on women. And then when they see in the same situation, in the very same Brackenfell, where women were beaten up by a white mob, they celebrate that. That should never happen, Chair. And we will never leave it lying down. Now, I just want to just settle that one and that record straight, Chair. Then I want to come in on the very same issue that Sheikh Imam spoke, Honorable Sheikh Imam spoke about the protesting going into local government election. And if we see this is the level of how police is going to handle protesting when it comes to Black people, we are in for a very shocking surprise, Chair. We will have another Marikana, because the way the police are handling situation in Western Cape, it must be paying, the National Department needs to pay attention to it. They will have a Marikana soon on their hands. You can't spray protesters with sewage water. You can't do that. Even when the Human Rights Commission were there saying to police to stop, they just continued. Even their life were not even a threat. There was no life of any person a threat, but why? They needed to come and protect whiteness, so the maximum force needed to be happening at that specific time. But let's leave that one where it is, Chair. There's a one on the vehicles that was mentioned here, Chair, that vehicles couldn't be purchased due to lockdown. I just like to find out from the department, did they put for themselves a time frame when they will ensure that these vehicles are purchased and it gets to the police stations that are really in need? Because we really do have a need for police stations to have proper vehicles to combat and fight crime. And then to the overpaid, overtime, Chair, I just like to find out in which ranks are those overtimes payments that is outstanding that needs to be paid. Because what we need to find out, the constables that are every day on the road fighting crime hard, they are the ones that shouldn't have been their overtimes not being paid, because those people are already earning a very small scale of salary. So those overtimes also assist them. So we need to find out in which ranks are those overtimes, Chair. We still have a lot of police stations without rape kits, and we are going into 16 days of activism. What plans have the department put in place to ensure that all police stations have these rape kits? And I think, Deputy Minister, it's time that you do unannounced visits to these police stations and really check these things, because your brigadiers and commanders, they will just do tick box exercises and say, this is done, and that is done. And that precise comes to what Honorable Peters have said. In some instances, there are word on the ground that you want to keep your figures down. So you as the ministers need to do unannounced visits to these police stations and see what you are getting on a paper. It's a true reflection of what is happening in the physical. And then there's the vacancy rate in the visible policing. It's a big concern, Deputy Minister. What is the plans there to solve that vacancy rate? We have unemployment. I mean, it can't be that hard to fill such positions. Take young people to college, train them. It can really not be that hard to fill those positions, especially if it's not your critical positions that we maybe perhaps don't have skills within the country. And then Honorable Sheikh, also I just want to add there on the PPE, really we need to get that breakdown on your local suppliers. Who are those local suppliers? Who are the directors? Because it can't be that you pay, in the one instant you pay 200 Rand for a sanitizer, and then on the next instance you pay 1,000 Rand for a sanitizer. Why are the 1,000 Rand sanitizer such special to the one of 200 if they are doing the same job? Chair, are you stopping me for time because I'm being interrupted?
No, continue, Honorable. It's definitely not from my side. Please continue.
All right. Then, Deputy Minister, we need... Chair?
Sorry, Honorable Tlangin. Let me just make this request again. Can people mute their mics, please, so that they don't disturb? Please continue, Honorable Tlangwini. I was just saying that if people could mute their mics so that they don't disturb people on the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Then we were told by Treasury, while some of these the budgets were cut, Chair, it's because money was not spent. And if you are having within where you can see where all of these monies were cut and monies were not spent at the time that it requires to be spent, what exactly is the department measuring if they don't spend the monies that are allocated towards them? That is like, it's a crime on its own to when you are getting money and you don't spend it for the purpose that it should be spent. We can't be having a police department that are sending money back in a program of vehicles and things like that because of the inability of the department to spend it. And then also, Chair, on the GBV component, yet again, we need to get full understanding of the department. What is the program in ensuring that your police officers are equipped with handling these cases? Because half of the time, your police officers are playing a counseling role where they were not taken to school to play a counseling role or to sent to mediate between a person that were beating up a person, but they were not taken or trained for that. So what is your role to ensure that you give the police officers effective training and continuous training that to ensure they are be able to deal with your GBV cases? I think, Chair, and then the last one, Chair, and it's a very important one, we need to do a proper register, General, and ensure that those firearms that these white mobs are carrying within Western Cape and within Free State, that we get a proper register. Is those firearms licensed? I can tell you now, when I moved from the Brackenfell protest, my car was followed by a mob of white people. And when they realized I'm driving to Acacia Park where police is, they returned. Now, we need to find out this mob of white people with these firearms. Are these firearms, and they opening, displaying it, no care about the police, they have no regard for the law, they just don't respect police officers. We need to find if these firearms are registered. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tlangwini. Thank you, honorable members. Let me join the honorable members and thank the SEPs for the presentation they've just made. If I were to come in, and thank you, Commissioner Sithole and DM for coming with the full bench of the generals, because that will allow them to respond to the questions which are being raised by the honorable members. Perhaps just to let you onto what Honorable Tlangwini has said about this, the carrying of guns. DM, you know that proportionally, whites are having more guns than black people, and that's an apartheid legacy. Now, when there are these marches, I don't understand why they are allowed to carry guns to the marches. Is it not the police that should be carrying guns to this responsibility of the police to manage protests and so on? Black people don't have guns, and the legacy of apartheid is that the white people are still carrying guns, and these are the guns which were used to oppress us. And I think there need to be some sensitivity, Honorable Deputy Minister, that some of these things they evoke some emotions from a number of us who were victims of the carrying of guns willy-nilly by white people in this country. And it can't be allowed that they are allowed to where they say they're going to keep law and order. That's the responsibility of the police. Why are they allowed to carry guns in the first place? They be legal or not legal to the marches, because we know that those areas are flashpoints. So I'm just saying that I would like to hear you and DM, as I'm saying, that it evokes a lot of emotions from a lot of us when we see the scenes of the 70s, the scenes of the 80s, the scenes of the 90s playing themselves again in democracy under the pretext of people are carrying illegal guns. But as you know, that what used to happen is that in all instances, those guns will be facing black people. So I think we need to. I want to hear what the leadership of the police is saying on this matter. Principal comment from my side. Our interest is to see the value for money, of the money that through this committee the Parliament appropriates and gives to police. The value for money, the biggest test for us is to see crime declining. So that's a principal value for money test that we look at. Coming to specific questions, there's a 3.7 billion rand coming your way. I just want to see, because there have been a lot of cuts and additions in your budget in the 2020-2021 financial year, and from the beginning of the budget, then the first adjustment, then we're having the second adjustment. So the question is, what is the net impact of these movements in the 2021 in your resources? Because there have been money going in, money going out, and so on. But can you indicate the net impact? That net we had an inflow of so much money, or net we had an outflow of so much money. How much, number two, how much underspending you are going to have this year before the adjustment, the second appropriations adjustment? How much underspending, if you could share in your different line items or whatever, to say that's how much we're going to underspend in this financial year before the second adjustment. Thirdly, can you share with the committee the trend of your underspending in the previous years? Where have you underspent? For instance, if you look at 2019, 2020, share with us where you underspent, and if you don't mind, you can say what was the reason for that underspending, and two, what was the impact on what we are saying is the primary responsibility of the police. And perhaps that's what I'm saying, the impact on service delivery. Can you also share about the impact that the strategies that you are putting in place to make sure that there's no underspending this year? Or perhaps put differently, with these adjustments that have been made in the second appropriation adjustment, do you think there are still going to be areas of underspending? If the answer is yes, which are those areas? Three, what are you going to do with it? Because this committee doesn't want the underspending of the budget. I'll tell you why. Economically, as you know, that the money that we spend more money than the money that we collect through SARS. So as a country, we go out and borrow money when we say we issue bonds to make sure that we deal with the deficit. But now, if we go and borrow money, and borrowing money, it's cost money. To borrow money costs money, as you know, the interest that you pay on that money, and money is not spent. It becomes a double jeopardy for the country, because one, it means the money is not being spent for what which was supposed to be spent for, one, but two, it means we are going to be paying more for that money which is lying somewhere not being spent. If from your procurement, can you please share with us that basically your big procurement items, where are they bought from? Well, from my side, I'm not interested here individuals or companies that you bought from for now. I just want to see how much of these you buy from South Africa. That's number one. Number two, how many companies, for instance, where are they that you buy your uniform from? Three, how many of those companies are black companies? How many of those companies are women companies? How many of those companies are companies owned by the young people? Because when we appropriate money, we're also wanting to deal with the apartheid legacy that is facing this country. We want to empower people by using procurement, which was a preserve of only white people in this country. So in terms of de-racializing the economy, SEPS is one of those departments which has got quite a big budget. So we are then saying, if departments like SEPS were to start spending on the previously disadvantaged companies and people, it will go a long way in trying to get economic reconciliation in your country. I'm also interested, where do you buy your hardware sort of things? Where do you buy your inyalas and so on and so forth? And where do you buy your guns? Are we producing those guns here? And if we import them, which countries are we importing them from? General, where do you get your tools of trade? Honorable DM and Commissioner, we saw infrastructure of PRASA being vandalized broad daylight. In some instances, the infrastructure of, excuse me, was even captured on videos. I just want to hear the take of, and billions have been lost. I want to hear the take of the SEPS leadership. How are they dealing with this thing? Why is it possible for people to go into a station broad daylight? We know that we do talk about PRASA security, but that's crime which is being committed broad daylight. And I'm sure a few meters from there, there is a police station. Yet people go to those areas and just tear down the infrastructure that has been paid for by the people of South Africa. And that must be used by the people of South Africa. If I were to add the poorest of the poor of this country, where were the police when this was happening? Oh, and again, if you don't mind, if you were to tell us exactly, are there people who have been arrested for that and what is happening? Commissioner, when I grew up again in some rural place in KZN, there used to be a time when it was known that the police is recruiting young people. It doesn't happen anymore. In the rural areas, you hardly hear of the police recruiting. What is your recruitment strategy? Are people from the rural areas being marginalized again from this? In fact, when I grew up, we knew police to be coming from rural areas that when they come and they do their work, they'll do their work proficiently. So I'm just trying to check, what is your recruitment strategy? Because we hardly hear of police recruiting in those areas. Commissioner Bashiri, that outlaw was out on bail, and from the first date he was known to be a flight risk. Yet, despite of that, we saw him transferring big sums of money. I just wanted to check, what was the role of the police in this whole incident, in ensuring that here's the person who's a flight risk. We know that the decision to give or not to give bail doesn't belong to you. But once there are bail conditions of a person which even somebody who hasn't been a policeman, can see that he is, or they are a flight risk. I just want to see exactly what was your role and what is your role at the moment, and if perhaps you can take this committee into confidence, what has been happening around that saga. People of South Africa asking us as lawmakers that how did we allow somebody who was clearly a person with many passports to flee the country? What happened? Then I think this one is my last one. Commissioner, can you share with the committee, when do you decide to put somebody on leg irons or not to put on leg irons? Because it looks like it's very arbitrary. And for me, does it make sense for somebody to present himself to the police to be put on leg irons? I'll tell you again, these are the things which evoke some emotions. I was on leg irons from Pietermaritzburg to Cape Town on my way to Robben Island. Obviously, I was a so-called terrorist. But somebody who presents himself to the police, does it make sense for that person to be put on leg irons? Are we sensitive enough about that? But more than anything, Honorable Deputy Minister, do we have a policy, or it depends on how that policeman or policewoman feels on that day? Perhaps it was fine with me. I was still very young, 22, 23 when I was on those leg irons. But in the van that we were transported to Robben Island in those leg irons, there was a 72-year-old man, Ubabu Zondo, coming from somewhere in Kwanongo. He was on leg irons from Pietermaritzburg to Cape Town. And we were arguing even then with the police that this man is too old, he can't, even if we're trying to flee here, why are you putting him on leg irons? But I'm then saying, 26 years down the line, you see people being on leg irons who will consider this person is not a threat of any sort to the police. But as I'm saying, that some of them would have presented themselves to the police. A long question short, what is the policy around this issue? We'll allow you, Deputy Minister and Commission and your team, to respond to the questions as you please. You'll only come back to me once you are satisfied that you have answered all the questions that the honorable members have put to you. And then there is a part course that I'll be giving you. Just remind me once we have finished all the questions that we have posed to you. Thank you so much, Deputy Minister.
No, thanks, Chair, and thanks to members for the opportunity to interact with yourself. We'll definitely, if you forget, we'll remind you, Chair, for the part course, so that we have something to carry on as we go back to our stations. We appreciate this interface with yourself. If you may allow, Chair, I'll request that the National Commissioner and the team response, and then I will come in at the end. Over to you, National Commissioner, through your permission, Chair. Over to you, National Commissioner, through your permission, Chair.
Please continue at DM. We're all yours. As I said, that until you finish with your team, the way you deploy your personnel, say once you are done, then you bring back to us.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me start by expressing our appreciation to the honorable members for the questions as well as direction. Chair, I will just take part of the strategic responses and I'll refer the operational flash questions to the operatives to deal with them, starting with the Deputy National Commissioners and the Deputy National Commissioner. I think just starting from the very last end, HR will provide more flesh, but the recruitment strategy of the South African Police Service has been revised, which also include new direction from the Minister. This particular recruitment strategy is extended to all areas, including the rural areas in the country. But I will only relate to extended concepts that compel the recruitment strategy to stretch that far. Firstly, we have initiated the rural safety strategy, Within the rural safety strategy, we have what we call the development of rural policing infrastructure and the resourcing of the rural safety strategy. So this includes, among others, the recruitment of rural-based reservists, as well as the recruitment of police at that particular level. Then we've also introduced the traditional policing concept. In the traditional policing concept, we have introduced what we call the Royal Reserve Police Service. And this Royal Reserve Police Service is also then linked to the National Reservist Personnel Plan. What we're doing at the present moment, we are recruiting reservists and we prepare them, and then in future, we also recruit from those particular reservists. Therefore, the rural safety part of recruitment is fully covered in terms of the current recruitment strategy. The second one is on the PRASA infrastructure. I think firstly, the PRASA matter is treated as an area of national sabotage. It's with high priority. Number one, we have lined up what we call the OPTA strategy, which is the unconventional policing approach in order to respond to this particular crime, because it is organized and there's quite a lot of networks talking to that. But secondly, we've got an integrated plan between SAPS as well as PRASA, which has also been endorsed by both ministers. And in terms of this integrated plan, we're working together with PRASA in order to normalize that particular situation. Then with regard to equipping the police as far as domestic violence is concerned, I immediately after we have initiated the departmental strategy on gender-based violence, that HRD must continuously conduct a training and development research which relate to the equipping of the police members so that they can provide the necessary response to gender-based violence. But over and above this, we also have the Inspectorate Division, which is deployed to go all over the police stations and then gather information and also feed the training and development strategy so that the training is always improved so that we provide the response. With regard to rape kits, we have introduced the contract management strategy in the supply chain, and we have unlocked all the contracts within that particular environment so that we avail the rape kits. But we're taking the suggestion from the honorable member to say we need to do unannounced visits. We are going to task our Inspectorate Division to also take a look at this so that we balance between what we have supplied to the stations and then vis-a-vis what is available. And then, Chair, with regard to our understanding of the card and the total implications thereof, I want to start from 2009-2010. That is during that time when the population was at 48 million, the SAPS establishment was at 199,000. And our investment in visibility was extremely high as a result of the availability of numbers. I think now that the population has increased to 58 million, which is 10 million more, I think our strength has gone down. At the moment is there plus minus 186. And therefore the need to increase the numbers is there. And secondly, the spatial development stretch has gone far ahead of the policing capability as we're speaking. There's various areas which were not there geographically. And those particular areas, as they expanded, they actually increased the population almost equally. And there's also been development that has been taking place. An example I can give, malls, there will be more than 10 to more than 20 malls that would have been established between 2010 and now. And all of them, criminals, they actually exploit them. This is just an example I'm giving, then let alone informal settlements. Then the advancement of modus operandi, Chair, one example I can give is the migration of modus operandi from the urban areas to the rural areas. The drug factories now, they are being established in the big farms, and criminals, they occupy those farms either through rental or buy them, which then is an indication that says you also need to shift your resources and so that you can provide that particular response. Then the spatial development has therefore then equally created a high demand on SAPs for infrastructure, to provide an infrastructure response through service delivery access. And therefore, we therefore need far more police stations than we have now in order to close the gap. And finally, the case of SAPs, if you would compare even just from last year to now, there's been a tremendous increase and a tremendous difference, and you need more investigators in order to investigate those cases effectively. And the policing method that we supposed to apply under normal circumstances is the basic policing method, which is 24-hour sustainable policing. But due to the fact that we have been outnumbered by the spatial development stretch and growth, we are forced to adopt the operational policing method. And the operational policing method, it's a fire extinguishing method, almost more than 2 times more expensive than basic policing. The last part is the economic response. Our main objective of policing is to create a conducive climate for economic growth, and as well as a conducive climate for investors to come to the country and invest. And this we can only achieve through visibility investment and effective policing. And therefore, if we do not invest in policing, the economic response shall not be as what one will then expect. But we have then introduced what we call that is policynomics, which is the study in the economics of policing. We are trying to link fighting crime as well as the generation of economy as well as social stability, so that we strike the balance. Moving forward, in terms of this particular study, we intend to measure crime together with the economic response, especially your GDP. And then, Chair, the directive on handling the stats on GBV. Firstly, I want to indicate clearly there isn't such a directive from national. But secondly, any tendency or practice by any member of the South African Police Service with regard to that, it's a serious misconduct in terms of the regulation. And I want to say upfront, a dismissible offense. Should there be any such, action is going to be taken. But the information shared to us by the honorable member would like to make a follow-up to it. But we're also going to task our inspectorate to look at this for us. Cases of gender-based violence, are treated according to existing instructions. We've got a number of members who have been charged, especially for sending gender-based violence victims away, and we still treat this as a serious one. Again, on gender-based violence, the current strategy is linked to the community policing strategy, where we are then working together with all the other disciplines, together with civil society, in order to provide this particular response. And that it's flowing from this particular strategy. Then with justice, we firstly have an integrated plan with NPA. Then we're also working on an integrated plan with correctional services, and again with justice. And this particular process is also escalated to the cluster, so that the whole criminal justice value chain provide a response to gender-based violence. So those relationships, they are part and parcel of the current planning. Then the impact report on CPFs, we can provide that impact report, but the strategy which was pronounced by the president in the SONA is currently under full implementation, and is driven between us and the community. Up to this far, the implementation, I think it's up to scratch. Let me say. Then the repeat offenders, I have given an instruction to crime detection to compile the repeat offender profile of the country. And this repeat offender, we said it must also be linked to the bail conditions, where we need to develop a database so that we can then be able to monitor these repeat offenders, because the repeat offender profile doesn't look very well, and we want to deal with that. Then the crime prevention program, in order for them to be minimally affected by the cut, one of them, we've introduced the reservist personnel plan. In the reservist personnel plan, the first part, we have, together with tourism, started working on the introduction of the tourism reserve police service. And then with the traditional leaders, we are introducing the Royal Reserve Police Service. Then the whole reservist personnel plan is intended to provide a response on sustained visibility. Within the rural safety, this also includes the agricultural friendly reservists that we also want to introduce. Then we have the resource management strategy, the integrated resource management strategy, which we have introduced. In terms of this particular resource management strategy, we are migrating the resources from the macro function of the organization to production level, because we want to make sure that the cut doesn't affect the production level, but it would rather than affect the macro function, as we would then migrate resources there. Then engagements with Treasury, we had several engagements, and we tried to instill the understanding to them to say, if there's no investment in policing, I think all other processes, they are not likely to sustain, including the economic growth. And this exercise was escalated to cluster level. We engaged Treasury as the cluster also. But at the end, Treasury said, then there's no money. But we also want to invite the support of Parliament so that there can be an understanding that if you invest in security, all other programs are likely to have a foundation. But at the present moment, we do not necessarily seem to have a solid security foundation on which everything is built. And that's what we're trying to do up to this far. So, Chair, with your permission, I can give the opportunity to our operatives to respond to some of the questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, our Deputy Minister of Police, Minister Matale, Deputy National Commissioners, as well as all other colleagues. I am General Vuma, responsible for I can hear you, Chairperson. Okay.
You need to show yourself, and then after that, it's the first time we interact with the general. So to give you an opportunity to see you. If you have got a problem of connectivity, then you switch off the video afterwards.
I am trying. My video is giving me problem. I'm trying, Chairperson. It is not responding.
I think the Erin will try and see how you help Lieutenant General. Lieutenant General, can you please continue?
Okay, I am trying. I will keep on trying, Chairperson. My video is not responding appropriately. Honorable Chairperson, I've noted the question that has been posed by honorable members with regards to the purchase of PPEs where a report is required. Definitely, we have a report that we shall submit to the committee with regard to the details in terms of companies and the prices, as well as the different names of companies that we have purchased from. During the time, it's safe to note that during the time when the President announced the lockdown regulations during late March as well as early April, the PPEs were very, very limited or scarce in the market. And during that time also, we did definitely experience the different prices that were not reasonable in the market. But due to the fact that the South African police members were in the forefront, they were regarded as the front line and they had to implement the lockdown regulations. They needed the PPEs, and we went ahead through following Treasury guidelines to purchase with those disparities. However, as soon as the situation cooled down, we made an analysis of all the purchases that we had, and we were able to identify those that escalated the prices where we purchased from, and we reported those companies to the Compensation Commission. So even the AGSA really commended the organization for doing that. So those investigations are ongoing with the Compensation Commission. So the report will be submitted to the committee. And in regard also to the question regarding the big procurements that we have in terms of where are we purchasing our tools of trade, such as nyalas, guns, as well as uniform and others, we will definitely compile a detailed report, Chairperson, that provides all the necessary details, including who owns those companies, etc., and we will make sure that the report is submitted to the committee as soon as possible. Indeed, in as far as all questions that relate to financial matters, I'm going to request the CFO to handle those specific questions, and also those questions that are specific with regard to supply chain. We have the divisional commissioner that is responsible for supply chain, will also handle those. HRM, of course, the budget cut has definitely affected subs in a big time in regard to HR priorities. As a result, we have put on hold a number of HR priorities pending us receiving the letter of allocation, which we have not yet even received from National Treasurer. So I will also request General Nziye to address the details in regard to that. The training in regard to GBV, which National Commissioner has touched on, I will also request the Divisional Commissioner General Zulu to also input in terms of the details program that we have in the organization with regard to that. With the permission of the Chairperson and the National Commissioner, shall I hand over to the CFO to handle finance-related matters? Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Deputy Minister, National Commissioner. I am Lieutenant General Gimpane. I will be handling the finance-related questions. If I start at the back end in relation to the questions from the Chairperson, the net movement in relation to this adjustment is as follows. Initially, we were allocated 101 billion. With the special adjustment, our allocation was then 105 billion. Essentially, the increase was as a result of the 3.7 billion that was allocated to the subs to deal with COVID-19 response. With the second adjustment that we presented today, we are now at 99.6 billion. The other question from the question was that any understanding towards the end, Chairperson, it is our plan that in terms of our operational budget, we utilize that particular operational budget. We indicated that there are other spendings in the areas of classes that are currently unfolding. We do have a confirmation from service providers, especially in relation to vehicles. We will ensure that we spend 100%. However, we cannot discount the challenges that we have in relation to infrastructure environment, where we have third-party arrangements with DPW, but there are continuous engagements from the department at the level of the National Commission Supply Chain with DPW to resolve such, and we also follow up on the invoices on a bi-weekly basis where we have meetings with DPW so that we ensure that the allocation that is attached to infrastructure environment is utilized fully. The COVID-19 funding has been allocated is earmarked by National Treasury. Due to the unforeseen nature of this particular allocation or COVID-19, we might foresee that by end of March there might be money that is left there in relation to this, but it is earmarked. It cannot be utilized for any other issues. Chairperson, there was then a question to say Treasury indicated that they are keeping these budgets due to the fact that departments are not spending. We can indicate that during the budget adjustment, it did not declare any savings as a department. There was also another question that I picked up that relates to the payment of service providers. Our compliance rate at this point in time is 99.7% in relation to settling our obligations with service providers on valid invoices. We process annually plus or minus 1.5 million invoices through our systems. If there is any instance where an invoice is not paid, we attend to it as a matter of priority. In fact, this is one area where we do not negotiate with our officials all over the country at police stations and provinces. There is an indication that on this space we do not negotiate. It is an area that we monitor almost weekly to ensure that all our obligations are settled and we ensure that we pay those businesses, especially in particular your small businesses. There is adequate funding that has been provided to ensure that effective civil operations are adequately resourced. There are specialized operations that do take place within the festive season plan. Those particular initiatives are adequately funded. There is also utilization of reservists during that time. It is also funded adequately. When it comes to repairs and maintenance of vehicles, we do not affect that particular allocation. We always ensure that there is sufficient allocation to ensure that our vehicles, our fleet is maintained at the right time to ensure availability or improve availability of vehicles, especially at police station level. There was also a question in relation to visible policing and GBV being the priority. Yes, indeed, we agree. GBV is a priority. There is sufficient allocation that is made to crime prevention to deal with all vulnerable groups. there is also a project on GBV. It is a multidisciplinary project that has been funded. This area is a priority for the department in terms of resource allocation. Chairperson, there was also a question on overtime. Which levels do you get overtime? I can indicate that it will be a level 1 to 12. We do process this overtime payments on a monthly basis. On a weekly basis, there are supplementary runs where we process this particular overtime. The activity is also decentralized at a provincial level. So provincial commissioners are handling their own overtime. However, we do process and pay overtime every month with supplementary runs where there were claims that could not go through. Chairperson, the other question is the 2.6 billion that has been cut under Program 2. Chairperson, you will recall that Program 2 is one of the biggest programs within those 5 programs. Essentially, the 2.6 is in relation to your COE or salary adjustment. Yes, there are HR priorities such as recruitment of constables that are normally lying on this particular program that will be impacted to a certain extent in terms of this. And also, we are proceeding in terms of the recruitment. However, there are challenges in relation to the budget cut. So Program 2 is one of the biggest program. The salary cuts, the salary adjustments will then likely to be more in relation to this particular program. So this 2.7 billion is mainly on your COE. There were questions to say, what measures are we putting in place to ensure that we are then able to function within these limited resources? Chairperson, we do have cost containment measures policies where we deal with the issues of non-core items, where we deal with the issues of wastage, wasteful expenditure, and we put systems in place to ensure that there is no wastage, and with a focus as well on irregular expenditure, where we then have to ensure that there is economic and efficient utilization of all resources. I must indicate that all indications are that we are going to have to, as a department, look into the issue of a reduction of the structure of the numbers. As indicated, we are awaiting a final MTF allocation from National Treasury at this point in time. Chairperson, I think those are the questions that I picked up that relates to the budget cuts. I am sitting with General Nelson. He indicates that I missed one. If I'm allowed to just give him 1 second to talk to that. Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Minister, National Commissioner and Deputy National Commissioners, the seniors managers. The question from the Honorable Member with regards to any savings declared, it can be confirmed, Chairperson, that no savings were declared or surrendered during any of the 2 stages of the to adjustment budget stages. Then, just with regards to the elections as well as part of the planning process, we will then, once we receive the allocation letter going forward over the medium term, we will then make sufficient provision. The department is spending in the vicinity of approximately 180 million on a general or local election, and that will also then be provided for. Thank you, sir.
General Rate, are you around? General Rate?
His name appears here, but he doesn't seem to be responding, General Vuma. But he seems to be, he's on the line. Unless we get somebody to respond either from Vispol while we get General Reed to come in on supply chain.
Thank you. Thank you. I can proceed, Thank you, Chair. Thank you, DM, National Commissioner, my colleagues.
Lieutenant General Masimula.
I'm Lieutenant General Mfazi. I'll be the person taking Mfazi.
Okay, please,
Lieutenant General Mfazi.
Yeah, just try to lift yourself up. We are only seeing you up to the nose. Please, want to see a little more of you. You are disappearing. Please go up, go up. Yes, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, was
Thank you,
Thank you.
Can you see me?
Very well.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. National Commissioner has spoken about the issue of gender-based violence. I think as the detectives also is one of the critical issues that we have actually taken note of. And of course, the current, as I'm responding on the issue that relates with the cutting on the specialized programs. One of the critical issues that might impact on the cut of the budget is the issue of the gender-based violence. As the South African Police Service, we have made commitment and we have engaged ourselves in programs that are actually being directed by the President's office. One of the critical issues that we're talking to is the reconfiguration of the FCS units in the South African Police and redefine the mandate. Because critically so, we've looked at the issues of matters that are committed, that are involving, that are actually gender-based violence related. And those murder cases are not being investigated in the FCS unit. They are being investigated outside that environment. And this becomes a problem because they ended up, the FCS focusing on the issues that relates with the rapes and so forth and so forth. The issue that relates with the actual murder of the victim tends to be something that is not being given some kind of a special attention. Therefore, that is why I'm saying that there is an element of reconfiguration that we're going on in as far as these units are concerned. And also we've looked at the issues that relates with the issue that relates with pornography, that it has been something that has actually overwhelmed the environment of the fourth industrial revolution. And we're actually trying to respond also in that aspect. And those are the kind of specialized skills that we want to retain in the police and also enhance them so that we should have an ability to respond on the issues of the day. Also, one other specialized kind of skills that might be affected is the fact that we are responding on the issue of taxi violence that has engulfed the whole country. We are responding on the issue that relates with the transnational crimes, that is your organized crime and so forth and so forth. Then we're in the processes of establishing those specialized units within the South African Police Service. If you remember, with the establishment of the DPCI, we ended up actually becoming very thin in as far as those skills are concerned in the South African Police Service. Then we're in the crusade of ensuring that we're capacitating the police so that they should be able to respond in those kinds of crimes. And of course, the gang unit. The gang unit has been just recently been established. And with the cutting of the budget, might actually impact on what we're doing in as far as the rolling out of the program. That might actually need some kind of prioritization and also expand it, specifically in the Western Cape, in the Eastern Cape, and of course, Gauteng and KZN. And quite critically so, there is an issue of the extortion that has actually affected the whole country, and also it has got a negative impact in as far as our economy is concerned. And we have established, based on the intelligence that is available to us, that most of those people that are involved in those extortions are actually gang-affiliated people. Therefore, this kind of a skill we need to retain in the police, and we need to have it. The National Commissioner has spoken about the issue of repeat offenders. In responding to the issues of repeat offenders, the first issue that we have done in responding to that issue was the establishment of the cold case unit that is actually directly involved in the office of the National Commissioner. In doing so, we need to capacitate the stations in ensuring that we're able to respond in this issue of the repeat offenders. We've established at that level of the station that we need to have a collection capacity and of course an analysis capacity, so that we should have an ability to develop what we call currently station intelligence profiles of individuals that are being active in specific crimes in those stations, so that those individuals should be addressed, so that we should not have a Pratim or Pramike who's actually a repeat offender in a specific station precinct. In essence, I'm saying also the issue of ensuring that we are responding on the PRASA issue. We have set up some kind of a special dispensation, rather special units that will be able to respond on the investigations of the PRASA problems. Currently, we're interacting with the Chief of Security in terms of responding on specific cases. Yes, we've arrested people that are within the PRASA environment, particularly individuals that are in the management that are interacting with criminals outside, in ensuring that some of the PRASA properties are being vandalized. And to us, that is a plus, and it shows that the plan is working. Thank you, Chair. I submit.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable members, our Deputy Minister of Police, National Commissioner, all the Deputy National Commissioners, and my fellow Divisional Commissioners. Chairperson, I am Lieutenant General Dinewonsia. I am the Divisional Commissioner responsible for Human Resource Management. I will be responding to the questions raised by members of the committee pertaining to Human Resource Management. The first one that I'm going to start responding to, Chair, is the one that you asked, the one that the National Commissioner has responded. I just want to indicate, Chair, that in addition to what the National Commissioner has already indicated, I can confirm, Chair, that we have revised our recruitment strategy as we were directed by the Minister of Police. And some of the issues that we are trying to address through our recruitment strategy, Chair, is to ensure that we market the SAPS as the employer of choice, to ensure that we improve the quality of the people that we are recruiting to the police. And the strategy is also trying to address the allegations of corruption and nepotism in our recruitment process. And we are also directed to introduce the e-recruitment in our recruitment process. And lastly, Chair, the strategy is also trying to strengthen our communication with our potential applicants. I'm saying this, Chair, because in our last recruitment, which was last year in September, we have marketed or we have advertised our vacancies in the local newspapers, as well as we even went to an extent of going to our local areas where we were communicating with the communities about those vacancies that are existing in the SAPS. And to show that our recruitment intervention last year reached even the local people, Chair, we received in excess of about 500,000 applications in our last recruitment process. And in terms of the second question that was asked, Chair, pertaining to how many critical posts are we having, or how many vacancies are we having in our critical units, I can confirm that, yes, Chair, we do have vacancies. We do have a number of vacancies in the police. We don't have the figures. We can make those figures available should they be needed. And what happened, Chair, the National Commissioner has approved last week a recruitment of about 2,490 qualified reservists. They were appointed to start with their training effective from the 1st of September, the 1st of December. They will be going to the college, and all of them, Chairperson, they are going to be deployed at our police stations to make sure that the services at our police stations are not negatively affected. I can indicate that, Chair, last year we were allocated 7,000 posts to replace those people that we are losing due to natural attrition. And we were at an advanced stage to recruit or to send to the college in April of this year, the 7,000. However, due to the pandemic, the COVID-19 and the lockdown, we had to suspend the project. So we couldn't send the whole 7,000 to the college. And unfortunately, we could only take 2,490 because our academies cannot take 7,000 without, observing the social distance. So we are only sending 2,490 to our college from the 1st of September. So that is basically it, Chair. Yes, the reduction of the compensation budget is definitely affecting the filling of our vacancies. But as the National Commissioner has indicated, we are trying to, with the little resources that we are having, we are trying to migrate some of the resources from head office, from provinces, to fill some of the vacancies at our police stations, because we don't want our police stations to suffer. We want them to remain 100% capacitated so that they can respond to crime at the local level. Thank you very much, Chair.
Can I come in, Chairperson? General Masemola.
General Masemola, continue.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, Deputy Minister, honorable members, and colleagues.
They want to see General Masemola.
Yeah, this camera don't want to. The camera don't want to unmute. I don't know what is this.
General, continue.
Thanks, General. We are trying. The camera do not want to unmute. If I continue from I'm Lieutenant General Masemola, responsible for policing. There were questions around the recovery of firearms as well as the applications for licensing of firearms. Yes, on the number of lost and stolen firearms, the question was, is it police or public? The answer is these firearms are for all. That is all firearms that are lost by members of the public, and that's what the target is for. We are shortfall on the target, and we will improve currently. Honorable members and Chair remember, during the COVID, we were concentrating more on the policing of the Disaster Management Act, and also, obviously, a lot of firearms might not have been on the roads because we were all on the roads across the country in terms of roadblocks. On the application for new firearms or the relicensing of firearms, what affected our performance there was that during COVID, we had to divide the personnel of the Central Firearm Registry into two. And currently we are slowly coming back, but we are not yet at the full scale, so they are working in teams. The other question was about the cooperation of the police with members of the public, more specifically in Kimberley. We have launched and rolled out the concept of Community in Blue, which is across all the provinces, including Northern Cape, and we cooperate with all community stakeholders that are prepared to work with us. The issue there was more the cooperation between the other stakeholders within the CPF, because we work through CPFs, and we encourage also stakeholders to work through CPF so that we are organized, we don't end up being all over. There was a question around the incidents of Dragonfell vis-a-vis Senegal. Honorable Chair and members, we will investigate this matter and find out exactly what would happen, what happened, because what we are aware of is something else. And including the carrying of guns by people that are attending matches. There the law is still straight that nobody should carry a firearm if we are going to participate in a match. So we will do a follow-up there in that regard. There was a matter around, I think General Fasi and NASCOM answered on the issue of PRAZA, but just in addition to say, from when we started the operation that the National Commissioner spoke about in the PRAZA environment, there has been 409 arrests and a lot of confiscation of copper and cabling, and we are still going on with the operation currently as we speak. Yeah, I think those are, in terms of, there was a question around leg irons. In terms of our prescripts are straightforward. People that we apply leg irons, obviously, is those people that are flight risk when they are arrested. But in this case, Honorable Chair, I'm not sure which case Honorable Chair is referring to. I'm aware of one case where it was said that the judge in the court ordered the police to leg iron a person. So there, the police were complying with an order. But in terms of our prescripts, we only leg iron a person who's a flight risk. Other than that, in this specific case that I'm aware of, I think DPCI might be more in a good position to explain. I was aware that there was an order that by a judge that they iron the person. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Those are my responses. Thanks.
DM, are you done with the team?
Yeah. General Rich or General Jenkins on supply chain?
Jenkins is not.
National Commissioner, is the generals, any of the two generals available?
DM, it appears to me that we have a problem with their connections. So maybe for now we can then rather leave them out because we're going to delay the time for the committee. That is my plea, DM.
I think we will be guided by the committee, but I think what we should do, National Commissioner, is to make sure that the questions that were raised by members which need a response from supply chain, we prepare that and forward it to the chair of the committee, or for members to have a response on the issues that they have raised. I must say, Chair, that the matter that has to do with Bushiri is receiving attention. We are still making follow-ups in terms of what really transpired. Our attitude is that anybody who was involved in that, either within the ranks or outside the ranks of the police, the law must take its course. It's a matter that the President has raised, the people of South Africa have raised, and we need to respond to that call as the JCPS cluster, because it's a matter that is being attended to by the cluster. I won't go into details around it, but it's an issue that we are not proud of what transpired. It's not an issue that a country like ours with the personnel that we have, something like this can happen. Is completely unacceptable. I agree with members when they say that, particularly I think it was Honorable Peters when she spoke about the centrality of communities in fighting crime. I think that's the view of government, and our constitution also have taken that into consideration, that at the center of our fight against crime are communities. Without collaborating with communities, we will never defeat crime. It will remain a wish, whatever we plan to achieve, because criminality and criminals happen within our communities, and it's them who know who is doing what and where. So it's very imperative to work with communities. And in the case that you have mentioned, we have interacted with the concerned individuals. I think we went there with the National Commissioner around January in Kimberley, where we went to Galishiwa and we had an imbizo there. That issue was raised by some members of a community who are fighting crime, who are not necessarily part of the CPFs. And our response and attitude, as General Masemola have said, is that we collaborate with anybody who is engaged in the community in the fight against crime. We don't adopt an attitude that says we can't work with certain members, because South Africa is organized in various forms. You have neighborhood watches, which are not necessarily CPFs, but we do collaborate with those structures, including those who work in the security space, who are not necessarily members of the South African police, who we call force multipliers, like your security industry, a private security industry. So yes, we agree with you, Honorable, that indeed working with communities will make it easy for us to defeat crime. And we have also taken note of that as the South African Police Service. The concerns that members have raised around the treatment, I think, as General Masemola said, how people were treated at Brackenfell and how people were treated at Senegal. There shouldn't be a differentiation that is made, that if you are a black, you will get a heavy-handed response from the South African police, and if you happen to be white, you will then get a different treatment. So any member of the force who conducted themselves, a member or members who conducted themselves in a manner that is not appropriate, is not acceptable, and investigations will have to be done so that we establish the facts around this, because South Africans must feel safe in the country in the presence of the police, particularly when they engage in legal activities like marching, where they have made applications and applications were granted despite the changes in the law, that people don't necessarily need a permission in order to march. But whenever people are gathered and they engage in peaceful activities, the police must be there to observe that law is not broken. It can't be police who breaks the law. I think those are the issues that I thought I should re-emphasize, just to say that impartiality should be what guides the South African police in doing their work. Yes, indeed, around recruitment, Chair, as you say, you are a rural person. We all come from rural areas. I have witnessed it myself, that the South African police, indeed, the recruitment that they are doing, they do it to involve rural people who have been in rural communities in the country, where community members were interacting with us, and you could see from the interaction that they are aware about the posts that are there, because we make it our job to ensure that everybody, like General Ntia said, the adverts are made in such a manner that even people in the most rural corner of our country get access, and the recruitment process is very transparent, Chair. We have even put in place appeal appeal committees up to the national level. In one of the meetings, it was resolved that I must also be part of that appeal committee as an ex officio member at national level to ensure that those who feel aggrieved because of how recruitment was taken and they get excluded, they can appeal to the highest office within the South African police, and their matters will be heard. So it's a transparent process, it's fair, it's open. When you fail or when it kicks you out, you physically see that I'm kicked out, because when you are made to do physical exercises, you are unable to cope yourself, you see it. And on the basis of that, you get excluded. There are a number of tests that people undergo in order to be ultimately selected. And at some point, when time permitting, we can take the committee through so that you can see how transparent the process is, because it will also be helpful that as public representatives, you understand the processes yourself. When you are approached by community members about issues that have to affect the South African police, you must be able to explain, and you cannot explain something that you don't know. So we'll be more than willing to interact with members of the committee so that they know and understand what we are doing, including as well, Chair, to give you a directory that we have within the South African police, which you can have as members at any given time. If you confront a situation that needs a response of the South African police, you can know who to call where, anywhere in the country. It doesn't matter where the person calls you from, you'll be able to give them a number that they can call. And these numbers work 24 hours most of the time. It might happen that you can phone a number that you don't get through, but there are people who, if it's a police station, you can also get the district. If it's not, you don't get through there, you get to the province up to national, including the contact details of the minister and the deputy minister and the national commissioner. So that directory will be very helpful, and I think through the national commissioner, we'll make sure that a soft copy is sent to your office and you can distribute it to other honorable members so that they can have this information and they are able to raise any matter that they have with the South African police at any given time. But like I said in the beginning, Chair, we appreciate the platform that you give us to interact with yourself, to come and account to yourself. And I'm happy about the suggestion we have made that you will create a day where we must come and explain ourselves on how we have utilized the resources that you have approved as a committee. You can't just give us money and we go and use it. The next time you see us is when you give us another money and there is no accountability in between. It also helps us because as we interact with yourself, the questions that you ask us here, some of them we don't come here prepared for them. And when you ask, you make us to have a different angle of our understanding of the issues that we deal with, and it's very enriching, and we are quite grateful of the opportunity that you create from time to time for us to interact with yourselves. Definitely a budget cut, even though we can explain that we'll be able to handle the situation, we'll continue to do policing, but it definitely have an impact. In our own opinion, it will be good if this is not done and we are given the money that we have asked for. I'm very sorry I didn't follow what you asked us to do of putting on the video. I only realized as I was about to conclude that my video was not on and I only put it on now. But thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity you have given us to interact with you, and also the response by the generals led by the National Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, General. Please, General Reid, please mute your mic. Thank you. Before I let you go, at DM and the team, I just want to check with Honorable Mlenzana. Honorable Mlenzana, anything that is pending that would like to raise? You didn't have an opportunity to do that. Okay, that's fine. Two.
No, Chairperson, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, thank you, Raul Lenzana. Lieutenant General, there was a question. I don't know if they are able to respond to it. I just asked the historical underspending in the department. Where has been your areas of underspending in the previous year, especially if we were to take 2019, 2020. Can you quickly respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for missing that one. Essentially, historical underspending experienced as for the department has been in the area of the CJS or criminal justice system allocation, which is earmarked. We have had challenges in relation to that particular funding, as well as within the facility or infrastructure environment. As I indicated, that there are third-party arrangements where we then need to execute facility projects with DPW. So these are the two main areas that historically we experience challenges and funds are surrounding that. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, let me just engage you, Major General Nelson. Just on that, on average, by how much have you underspent there?
For CJS, last year it was 754 million. The year before, it was in the region of over a billion that was declared as a saving.
Okay. On infrastructure?
It's about 2 to 3 million that we experience challenges in relation to, even in relation to the budget cuts. That particular understanding, because we experience challenges, was an area that we focused on when we were doing the prioritization. So it will be in your region between 2 and 3 million in your infrastructure environment. Thanks, Chair.
2 to 3 million? Million.
Million.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you, DM. Thank you, Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioners and the Generals in the platform, honorable members and everybody on the platform. And I'm sure we can all agree that was a very worthwhile interaction. First one with your good selves. When Deputy Minister Matale was hiding himself, I thought he was going to his old ways of being underground, forgetting that we're in a democracy now. Wanted to see our leaders, they must come and show themselves so that people of South Africa can know they are the Deputy Minister. That wasn't a jest. I'll make a few comments as I'm concluding. When we meet again, would like us to also brief us on your crime intelligence. How do you rate it? What are the challenges and so on? In fact, what triggered this question from my side it's when one of the generals said that, in fact, it's the commissioner himself who said that criminality is now migrating towards the farms, especially as it concerns drugs and so on and so forth, which I think should be easy for people there, because those should be our first lines of defense to say there's a strange activity now in this farm and so on. All of a sudden, what's happening? So, but I'm just saying it's very important that we also know about the levels of your crime in intelligence. And I can't agree with you more, Commissioner, when you are saying crime or lack thereof, it's one of the very important determinants of investment, and by definition of our ability to grow our economy. You know that before people invest in a country or in a particular area or town, they do consider how safe their families are going to be. So I agree. I know when we cluster these things, Deputy Minister, we always put to, I think, the safety and security. But I think it's one area which should be cross-cutting. When we were in the economic cluster discussing our issues, I think SAPS should be part of it, because there's so much which depends on what you do or you don't do in your area. Again, when we meet, please take us through again your ability of crowd control, you know, especially when we go towards the elections. We're going to local government elections next year. So you have got a lot of protests and so on. And would like to see our police services that they are up to the task of dealing with those with crowd control. DM also the commercial crime. Please also address us on this one when we meet again. The skills, the competency, and so on of dealing with this type of a crime. I know there are a lot of very complicated deals that are happening and so on. Money laundering, we need to talk about all those things. One would like to know, Commissioner, what are we doing around this area? I'll tell you that some of the things, some of the crime that is committed there in those books and so on, they do definitely need a particular a set of skills. So let's also talk about this. As you can see, all these things are related. But on the 15th of October, as part of the, and I think it's an exercise that you really need to get into, on the 15th of October, the president presented what you call the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. Basically, it's a plan which is going to help us get the economy back to growth trajectory. That's what is going to help us to stay away from these cuts, which sometimes can't be avoided. But we're the first ones to say it's not sustainable. It should be just transitional. So we are agreeing that the answer to our woes is the question of growth and inclusive growth. So one of the things that we have seen, that certain departments think this is the preserve of certain departments. We argue differently, that all the departments and everybody in South Africa has got that responsibility to ensure that we grow our economy. To make an example, this thing of localization and buying South Africa, whether we're companies or government or individuals, those things help us grow South African economy and therefore create jobs for our children, so that they can get their children, they can get employment opportunities here. Everything that we import, we must know that we are contributing negatively to economic growth. It's a minus. But even more important is that we are exporting the jobs which are supposed to be the jobs of our children when we do that. Those employment opportunities, we are growing other people's economy and we are not growing our own economy. Deputy Minister, National Commissioner, please know that as this committee and this parliament in general, we are very sympathetic of the conditions under which our police operate and putting their lives on the line, so that me and you are safe. We we are not taking that one for granted. And we also wanted to join those South Africans who have come up and condemned the senseless killing of men and women in blue. We'll join all those who say those people must be given harshest punishment. In my dictionary, that borders on treason. And that type of crime should really be treated at the DM. I don't know what we can do, because the courts should treat that crime. To kill a policeman is treacherous. To kill a policewoman is treacherous, let alone about the impact that has, not just on the communities, but on their families. So wouldn't hesitate to join those people who say, can we please give out harshest sanctions as the courts, and let's not be lenient about these things. We don't want to be understanding. You can't go out and kill people who are supposed to protect us. Related to that, DM would like to know what do we do as police, for instance, our interaction, some safety nets, if there are, of the widows and widowers of the police who were killed on the line of duty. It will be interesting for us to know what exactly are we doing, because we should be seen to be a caring nation. We can't only be looking at the police when in trouble, but when they're in trouble, we are not there. I must still see a person when he's under any form of threat doesn't look for the nearest police station. But there's also a challenge to you, DM, National Commissioner, Deputy Commissioners, and all the generals and the officers who are on the platform, that it's a tendency, it's a South African tendency, that we don't talk about the good things that we do. We only come up when we are on the back foot, and we must explain the things that are not going all right. So the communication of government in general in South Africa is not good. But again, it's I'm then the challenge that I'm giving to you. Let's not only communicate when there's trouble. Let's communicate about the good work that we as police are doing to keep South Africa safe. With those few words, DM and your team, thank you very much. And as I promised you, we'll definitely be meeting next year. And perhaps as we do our oversight, we may want to visit some of your places. But the committee must still engage with that. But thank you very much, and DM, Commissioner, and all the officers who are on the platform.
Chairperson?
Yes, and that is who? Who's that?
Chairperson?
Yes, who's talking?
No, it's Lieutenant General Reid. I want to apologize. I was supposed to give feedback on certain issues, of which I don't want to take your time back. It's my humble apology, because the network wasn't good this side. But I did get the questions for the PPE, the crime kits, the vehicles purchase, as well as the breakdown of vehicles, of which I'm going to communicate in written to your officer. My humble apologies that are coming in now at the end of this meeting.
That's perfect, Lieutenant General Reid. We'll await for that.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I think this brings us to the end of our meeting, and as I said, well appreciated. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DM.
Long
Thank
live
you,
the
thank you,
chair.
Chair.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
And you referred to 2012.
Major General Tillis, why are we coming now? Because
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I see there's also Lieutenant General Buttelis here. DM, why didn't you introduce? DM. Okay, no, thank you, Shenge.
Yeah, well.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of our meeting.